this will be a quick one because we are almost done. Again, your fertilizers are going to be NPK in that order, and there should be double the phosphorus that there is nitrogen and potassium. Fertilizers, physical properties, sometimes they're liquid, sometimes they're gas, sometimes they're a solid. Some formulations can be lumpy, they are hard to apply. That's why you need a license to apply them to large areas. Ammonium nitrate, explosive. Sellers and purchasers have to be registered with Homeland Security. Canada has similar rules. Afghanistan has similar rules. Almost everyone has rules for ammonium nitrate because it is really, really explosive and dangerous, and you can make meth with it. Good times. Plant requirements are similar for most plants, especially in like large agriculture, but if you think of it, corn requires a ton of nitrogen, soybean requires 0 nitrogen. It makes its own. So if you're a bean plant, you can get your nitrogen from your mycorrhiza fungus, the little balls on your roots, so you don't need extra nitrogen. So you have to know what plant you're growing and what its nitrogen requirements are, whether it needs a lot of phosphorus. You need to do a test on your phosphorus. Most of the areas around here have what's called legacy phosphorus, so they have phosphorus that's been there for years and you probably don't need anymore, or at least there's places in your field where you don't need anymore. In terms of horticulture and plants, it is better to know exactly what your plant needs, and you're going to put like an Osmocote, which is those little green or white tiny little balls of fertilizer. Basically that's a slow release, so every time you water it, it releases just like a tiny burst of fertilizer, so you don't have to keep fertilizing it. That's what that's for. Now we can do something really fancy. This is very exciting. I love this research. So essentially we can look at your soil like this and say, this is your map of where you need nitrogen and where you don't need nitrogen. And the field, it's called a green seeker. It can actually go through the field and just variable rate. So you're not putting too much on where you don't need it, especially phosphorus. There's a lot of places that are hotspots or legacy. They have tons of phosphorus there. We don't need it anymore. So for example, if this is a phosphorus map, we don't need any phosphorus here. So the nozzles would shut off. It would do half the field and it would go through and only place phosphorus fertilizer in the red zones. Does that make sense? And over here could be the one for nitrogen. This could be the one for phosphorus. And they can variably rate as you go along. It's very exciting. It's very precise. It's really doing some great things to reduce contamination. Another thing that is become very popular, it's actually started in Holland with the tulips, is taking a tissue sample midway through the growing season. So you would pluck off a leaf and see how much N, P, and K are in your actual leaf. How much is your plant taking up? And then you can see, here's one with corn. This is the corn yield that you want. This is luxury consumption. You don't need. This is basically the corn yield that you're shooting for. Anything over this is just wasted. This is excessive. This is high. This is called luxury consumption. Like they're consuming it, but they don't need it. This is really your ideal place. Here, you could get more yield. Here, it's totally deficient. So you see this in yield. You can see this in the tissue. And you can take tissue samples and do your fertilization based on what your plant is actually happening. You have to have a lab close, and it's kind of expensive, but especially in horticulture, crops, specialty crops, this is really important. So you know exactly how much fertilizer that you need. pH, of course, is important. You raise the pH by calcium carbonate and lime, and you use different fertilizers to raise and lower the pH. Soil CEC requires nutrients. It requires anions. It can be increased by adding clay or organic material. Mostly you just want to focus on your soil health and you're adding organic material. Nobody's really like applying clay to their fields. They're just trying to leave some residue and get more organic matter, and that will improve your overall soil health, and that will help with your CEC. Gas injections. This is the ammonium. This is anhydrous. This is super dangerous. It's actually fertilizer gas injected into the soil. It is, again, dangerous, but farmers use it. It's very effective. It's very cheap. That's popular. Anhydrous ammonia. Solids would be powders, dust, granules, and then liquids would be any kind of dissolved fertilizer or manure, also a liquid. Oh, that's exciting. Fertigation is anytime you're adding the fertilizer to irrigation and you're doing it at the same time. This would be golf courses, nurseries, greenhouses, landscapes, your yard, however you're adding your fertilizer. Usually it applied every irrigation. Fertilizer rates are really, really low so that you do not burn them. You can over apply fertilizer and it will burn the leaves. There are things called fertilizer injectors. They concentrate the fertilizer and it can be mixed in containers and then put into the tank, and it will pull from it every so often. And that is what those look like. This is a fertigation, different types of fertilizer injectors. So it injects it into the irrigation line. And that is all